Good morning, everybody. It's half past ridiculous, and we are Essential Mentium. We're not seeking it anymore. We're actually there. We got a whole bunch of stuff have come up in the last, 10 days, 2 weeks that I can't really go into a lot of detail right now, but it's real major game changers. And I know lots of folks out there probably have felt it. Even if you're not aware of what's going on, if you're like a new listener, or you're not looking at the energetic aspect of this existence, you're still feeling it. You're feeling you get weird pains, can't wake up, can't sleep. It could manifest in a whole bunch of different ways, but just be aware that pretty much everybody's going through it, and for the most part, it's a good thing. Good morning, Carl. How are you today?
I'm great, actually. Thanks, John. Despite those energetics, and I have experienced them this last week, as we briefly discussed pre-show. Just for anybody that wondering what the hell is going on, emotionally maybe as well. Emotions coming out of the blue, stuff that you have no idea why this is happening to you, pains, headaches, just name something. Big one actually that most people are feeling are like the panic attacks and the feeling of a heart attack. That's a big one. There's lots of people I know have been experiencing that one. So, but really good week. Sorry to everybody that hoping that we would be around last week, but a whole sequence of events meant that it was easier just to cancel last week's show than it was to go through it. But we've got people coming in, and we've hopefully got some good, interesting stuff that we can get everybody involved with for today.
Yeah, well, I'd like to kind of touch on the energetics a little bit. I know this is a significant departure from what we usually talk about, but it is so prevalent right now, and it's going to get even more so over the next little while, continue to be more so. It's something that's going to grow, and it's going to be touching everybody. How do we want to put this? Well, you could use the conventional term telepathy. We prefer to simply call it an energetic connection, or energetic Wi-Fi, or Ethernet, spelled with an A, A-E-T-H-E-R, is really coming online. A couple of the groups that I'm with, that I work with on a regular basis, they're noticing this, and we'll be having a discussion, and 5 people in the room will come up with the exact same thought at the exact same time, word for word, exact. This is something it happens, or it used to happen occasionally. Once in a while, you'd get the same concept, but it wouldn't be a word for word thing. This is happening like regularly now. The concept of deception is crashing. It's still there. Yes, it still exists, but it's almost impossible to use now. Which, this does tie in with what we're talking about before, because anybody who's dealt with the banks or the law, it's all about deception, and it's all about, what you don't know. That's rapidly going away. So the whole point, the whole purpose of this show, or the original purpose of this show, may be moot very shortly, and we'll have to come up with another direction to go in. I'm hoping we can keep it moving for a little while longer, because there's still lots of folks out there that need to learn a lot of this stuff, and at least touch on it, because that makes you aware of these changes. And it's partly why I'm bringing this up now, is to bring this into people's awareness, so that when it does occur, and it will occur to you, you at least have some basis to rationalize it. If well, I went through it 3-4 years ago, where for about a month I slept maybe 8-10 hours a week, and I felt great. I felt fine. I really didn't understand what was going on at the time, but I knew it was an energetic shift, and it was something that needed to happen. We get lots of reports, even from a year ago up until now, but it's getting more and more as time goes by, of folks who they have an experience. They feel like they get a tightness in their chest, or they can't breathe, or they get horrendous pains, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor checks them out, and there's just nothing wrong. There's nothing there. This is becoming really common lately, and this is part of the energetic shift. What we've discovered, we can't say for absolute certain that this is entirely accurate. I'm sure there's a little more to it than what we're actually seeing, but we've got a pretty good idea that every system that we deal with, whether it's time, whether it's the law, whether it's nature, all of the various different systems that we interact with have had what we're calling an overlay put on them, kind of a facade placed over them that sort of alters the way we view it, alters the way we interact with it, and these overlays seem to be breaking down, seem to be being removed. So we're getting back into the authentic experience. And what we believe, these pains, these heart palpitations, the panic attacks, all of these things, what we believe they are is the overlay panicking. When it's being removed, especially if it's something you're doing, if you're actively researching, or you're meditating on it, or you're seeking the energetic aspects of this, it is using a tactic that is typically called aversion training, which is a way, long time ago, I don't subscribe to it, I know it exists, but people used to use it on animals. And if the animal did something you didn't like, you smacked it, and the animal learned that if it did it, it's going to hurt, so it won't do it anymore. Certainly, some of this probably is real, so if you do have serious concerns, check them out. But if you go and you check them out and they go, there's nothing wrong, it's probably this, one of your overlays, one of your experiential deceptions that have been placed on you is being removed, and it doesn't like it, so it's making it uncomfortable for you. At least that's the conclusion that we came up with. I'm sure there's probably other explanations or even greater depth to this than that, but that's the information we've got right now.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that as well. Perspective, independent of yours, because I felt and I had experience with people that I know who've gone through some fairly serious physical conditions over late, especially the last 12 months, actually 12 months to 2 years, and there's been no reason for it, no physical reason, and many visits to the doctors and the specialists hasn't really revealed anything. But it's happening to them. They're experiencing it, and they just don't know what it is. Fortunately, I'm aware of the other stuff, as are they. So they've been going to the doctors as a precaution. But, when they come up and they say, well, we can't find anything wrong with you, all your blood tests come out perfect, or maybe this is a little wrong, that's a little wrong, but really we can't find anything wrong. We've no idea why you're experiencing what it is that you're experiencing. But it's happening. It's definitely happening. And I think your idea about the overlay, yeah, you've put it a slightly different way than I had thought about it, but the end result was the same, that it was our programs, let's say, that interact with us as human bodies within this construct, within this reality, that go into panic mode when, you know, the antivirus of the current energies kicks in and discovers them as the virus and tries to kick them out. That, I think, is the physical effects that we generally feel. I found actually that kind of existing in that higher state, that you can, changing from one of no joy, from unhappiness, from all those low energetic emotions, to a higher state, a higher emotional state, trying to exist in love and the gratitude and giving and so on, actually does seem to help, because I've not experienced the energies in anything like the way that I done, say, 6 months ago or 12 months ago, where I definitely felt a whole host of different things. Now, some people in the chat and in the room itself right now will know my circumstances recently changed. So I'm actually existing in a completely different state than I was 6 months ago. And my physical interaction, let's say, and physical responses to these energies are not the same. I know they are there, and I know what's happening. They just don't affect me the same way. And it's really is a very interesting, I won't even say experiment, but it's a very interesting thought process to note that actually has and is taking place just by my changing my own emotional state has changed the responses to the energetics that are constantly occurring. So if I have any advice to anybody, is try and do that, you know, try and change your state as much as you possibly can and exist in that happiness and joy and the love state, and try and avoid all the low level emotional energetic shit that tries to keep us down, keep us in those low emotional vibratory states, because that's where these programs seem to work best. And the energies don't help us all that much, or make the process of change that much harder.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that, John?
Well, in all the research that I've done over the years, it has become abundantly clear that we exist in the energetic first. The physical, the day-to-day interactions that we go through, dealing with mowing the lawn and cooking dinner and all of that stuff, those are all secondary to the energetics. And this is becoming more prevalent and more in your face lately. That if you concentrate on the energetics, if you focus on the energetics of any interaction and adjust those, the physical follows. Wherein if you adjust the physical, the energetic doesn't necessarily follow. So the energetics are primary, and this is a new thought to a lot of people. They've probably never explored this before. I know I haven't, and it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really looked at it from that point of view. And when I put the energetics first, when I make the changes in the thought form, the emotional, the non-tangible aspects of existence first, then the tangible just follows suit. It follows along quite nicely, and it works quite well. There's lots of people I interact with that do this on a regular basis, and they're not having any significant issues. Certainly challenges arise, but they're, dramatically less than the people who are not looking at the energetics, and they're simply going about their physical lives as if that is the paramount thing. Those are the folks that are having all the issues. So consider that. If you don't wish to adopt it, don't adopt it. It's fine. It's not a problem. It's just, this is, a thought form, just an exercise that's an interesting one to look at. And if it applies, if you get value from it, then excellent. If you don't, that's fine too. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Carl.
I agree on that one. I just had one little comment I would add to it. I think Brianna is the only one in the room right now that actually heard the story about how Tara and I came together recently. But part of that process also, I mentioned the very fact that, and you brought it up earlier, that Tara and I seem to be on a telepathic level that neither one of us have ever experienced, to the extent that, we know now what the other is thinking to a certain extent, and feeling especially. And we've kind of experimented with it a little bit, stuff that comes to us, instead of just brushing it off and saying, oh, we don't believe that, or that's just something that popped in my mind. Now we actually ask the other one, is this yours? Did you think this? Or feel this? And typically it's, oh yeah, my God, So you brought that up, and it was just interesting that, we've experienced that in a very, very big way within the last couple of months, and are still experiencing that. So, yeah, definitely go with the energetics, experiment with it, look into it a lot more, because I'm pretty sure it'll help you if you're, having a bad interaction, let's say, with what's going on. Look at it, because it can't do any harm, put it that way.
Well, certainly. If any of the folks that are listening, they're curious about this, they want to get some more information, or they want to explore it a little more, it's best to explore it in a group. So let us know. Stick a comment in, ask a question. If we get sufficient people asking about the energetics and how to work with the energetics, then we can step into that and have that discussion. I noticed Mark just showed up. Hi, Mark. Quacks, for the folks that are looking for him on YouTube. Listen to your videos, and I get the impression that you need an outlet. You need a chance to vent a little bit, because that I noticed on the 6th video you were getting pretty emotional, and I totally understand. I totally get where the anger and the frustration is coming from, for sure. You want to come out and say hello and talk to us about it?
Well, just before we do that, John,
okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to butt in. I know David wanted to come in and talk a little bit about the cryptocurrency stuff. And I know David mentioned he's got a kind of a previously booked appointment for something like 40 minutes from now.
Okay.
So I don't know if it might be worth touching on that little subject first, and maybe getting some input from David on that one. And then, of course, we'll have more of the show to dedicate to Mark and anything else that we want to discuss.
Okay, works for me, as long as it works for everybody else. I'm okay with that. Hi, David. How you doing today?
Oh, we never tested his microphone. He's open, but we can't hear you right now.
Yeah.
No, we can't hear him.
Brianna says it's what the fuck in cryptos right now, and yeah, totally. They're going off the rails. They're trying to figure out a way to control it and turn it to their advantage, like the banks and the previous controller systems, and it's not going to work for them. David, no, we can't hear you. Your mic is not. It's turned on. I can see it's active, but we're not hearing any sounds.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have enough time to really check that before we kind of jumped right into the show. We came in right at the opening of the show.
Well, hey, it's live radio. This is how it goes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, well, let's touch briefly. I mean, obviously, maybe David can type something in, or we can do something with getting him in the background, getting his audio work.
Oh, I heard something there. Try again, David. It was almost something.
Yeah. Anyway, cryptocurrencies. Yeah, Brianna just put that little comment there, and you brought it up.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts on cryptocurrencies really is that it's been a start off that went in the right direction because it was uncontrolled, it was transparent, and it was finite because Bitcoin was really the first one, and there's only a finite number of Bitcoins that can ever be mined and created. I think after that, with all of the other crypto stuff, I think what they were trying to do was bring in a crypto system that they could control and use themselves, i.e. the controllers. That's where I think a lot of the new cryptocurrencies have been going. This is my own personal opinion, by the way. And I like the idea of the cryptocurrencies to some extent, but one of my thoughts is that all we're doing is transferring from paper currency to digital currency, and finding the best way of going about doing that. And to me, that isn't where we need to be going. But that's where we're all programmed. We have to have money. We have to have currency to do things. And if we can't do with the system that we currently have because it's collapsed, then we have to find something to replace it. And to be quite honest, that isn't where my mind goes. That's not what I perceive. So on that note, I don't know if anybody else has any comments, or if David has managed to get his microphone functioning.
Well, I'm seeing little bits and pieces coming through, David, but it's not what I'm hearing isn't voice. When I look at that, the cryptocurrencies, I agree that they're just another form. They're just another form of exchange. It doesn't matter if we're using a piece of paper or a digital. Oh, there we go. I can hear myself.
David, you can actually get the feedback from us coming through your. So I don't know if you can try talking now. See if we can hear you. No, he's gone again. It doesn't matter whether it's a piece of paper,
a digital signature, or a bottle of toenail clippings. It's just a means of exchange. The thing that excites me about the cryptocurrencies is that they can't be controlled in the way that the paper currencies that we've been working with have been controlled. And this is due to the blockchain technology. And that's the part of this whole thing. Not the currencies, it's interesting, but it's the blockchain technologies that really excite me because they can be used for all of the things that we've dealt with that are control systems. And it takes the control away. I want to pursue this more if I can possibly do it, but I haven't been able to find Anybody that's really looking at this in any significant way, I know they're. Oh, there we go. Hello.
There we go.
Now it's working.
Yeah, I had to do a little playing on my side here. So how's the volume on that?
That's beautiful. You're fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so let me know when you want.
Welcome, David.
Thank you. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing good. We're doing good.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just while you were working there, we were just discussing the concept of cryptocurrencies is really no different than any other currency that's ever been produced. It's just it's ledgered in a different way. And for me, it's that ledgering that's the really important part of this that we should be looking at, because it can be used for anything. It can be used for your car, your properties, anything where you want to have a bulletproof paper trail of I don't want to use the word ownership because that has nasty connotations, but
Transactions, I think.
transactions. Yes, transactions works well. And that's where this blockchain technology really shines.
Well, money in and of itself, as I understand, and you guys have known me long enough that if the one place that I play in is often to the deep ends of the woo-woo, and the energetics. So I heard the conversation earlier, so you're talking my language here.
Good.
I mean, the money, basically, in itself, is just a form of exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Exchange in all life is a normal part of interacting. It doesn't matter if you're hugging someone, if you're saying hello to someone, if you're trading stones for fish, or if you're trading, perceived value or dollars. The problem that we've had is that all of the monetary system or all the exchange system has been funneled into this monetization system, which is, it's a valid form of exchange. However, it's a very rudimentary one. And it's only one small form of exchange. You're supposed to experience it and then evolve out of it. The place that I think this came up on this article that I posted about Visa and MasterCard, that they have their own blockchain systems now. And let's see here, MasterCard's version is MasterCard B2B Hub, and Visa's is Visa B2B Hub. Basically, these are not the payment systems in themselves. You have to read the articles to see this. It's what's that? The settlement part, which is the same thing that the SWIFT system is doing, which is just a verification and validation that a transaction has taken place. And so, to me, this is the first step of replacing the SWIFT system. Now, the thing that I'm looking at in this is that because people's experience is so tied into the current system, I mean, it's their beliefs, it's their how they perceive their personal value, is that you cannot. It's very difficult. Let me say that it's very difficult to go from one thing to something completely new. It's much better to take the current system, use the current wheel that we have, and have it work differently, have it work in a way that works for everyone. And the one thing that I'm seeing with some of the big people like Putin and the Chinese leader and all those guys is that the way that they have been going about things is a little different than in the past. And that's that they are personally involved in the experience along with everyone else. And that piece has not been in the construct, or however you want to view that piece. It's always been these controllers out there, and they're not part of the experience that the regular schmo on the street is having. Whoever the controllers are, they're in the experience right now. And if they're not in the experience, they don't have a say in how things play out here.
Well, let me just jump in there a sec, David, because when you were talking about exchange and so on, I've had a thought process that I've put out there for a number of years now, that I believe that humanity's biggest downfall right now, as far as our continued existence is concerned, has been the concepts of value and the concepts of exchange. We believe that everything has a value, or we have been told that everything has a value. And as such, whenever we trade something or give something or receive something, then the next concept comes into play, which is the concept of exchange. And that because value must equal value, like for like, or better, which means profit, the exchange kicks in, and now we need something to exchange that gives an indication of the value. And that's basically what money is. The description of money is that which facilitates the exchange of goods and services. And the latter part of it also should be that it must maintain value. It's also a store of value. Unfortunately, because that program is in everybody, and most people don't know how not to be that and do that, those are the concepts that we must remove as quickly as we possibly can. Because when we look at anything, if we give, because my extension to that, my next thought process was that if everybody gives, just by default, everybody will receive. You just won't necessarily get it from the person that gave it to you. So there's no exchange taking place. You just give because you can and you have it or whatever. Like you give a hug. Okay, you give a hug to somebody. Doesn't mean to say that they have to hug you back. Maybe they don't want to hug you. How many grandparents hug their grandkids, and the kids certainly don't want to hug them back. I know a few like that. So that, that kind of thinking, in my view, has to change. And this is where the concepts of money, currency, exchange, value, cryptocurrencies, this is what's happening, and what we're moving, we're changing into something else. And you're quite correct. They want us, I think, to move into something that we can accept, because those programs exist. We can't jump all now to a concept of, well, there is no money. There is no exchange anymore. We just work, life continues. We just do stuff. We take out the garbage because we need to take out the garbage. There's no concepts of the exchange. There's no concepts of value. It's just existence. And how best to change to that is where we need to put our focus, in my view. I mean, again, this is something I've put out there for a number of years. People have disagreed with me for the simple fact that those programs are really the fundamental programs of our existence, that everything is about value and everything is about exchange, because that's our daily lives. And if you take that away from people or you remove it from people, they are lost. And I've had wonderful arguments with people about how or why money doesn't need to exist, but people just don't get it. So from that point of view, how does that fit in with what, stuff that you've been looking in, bearing in mind that you're also looking from a viewpoint of energetics as well?
Right. Well, it fits in very, very well. And the hurdle, the big hurdle is that on the one hand, money isn't real. However, the experience that people are having about money is very, very, very real. And that's the piece that you can't separate out immediately. Generally, you have to open up the space so people can evolve out of that of their own accord. We're basically looking at the same thing as someone that has been born into slavery, literal sexual and labor slavery. This is all they know, and you take them out of that and plop them in a world where there is no slavery. I mean, that can be done. That's easy, and that actually needs to be done. However, the integration part that is going past someone's beliefs that takes time to have someone integrate that level of going from a completely controlled experience to something where they literally have free will. And as far as the monetary thing, I'm not so much looking at the monetary thing itself. I'm looking at the monetization part of that. And basically, the system of monetization is that you assign a value to everything. And then you have one or two things of perceived value that you use as a touchstone so that you know the perceived value of everything else. That in itself is not bad, but that's why I'm saying the really screwed up part on this is that the controllers or whoever have tried to funnel all exchange, the experience of exchange, through this monetization system. And
that's how they do the control system. Yeah.
Right. And the big energetic piece, and I think, Carl, you might be able to talk to this with the experiences you're having with Tara now, where it's like, hey, hold on here. This is not something's changed. Is that in the bigger picture, we now have a connection to a collective. Whatever experiences we're having, basically stories come out of those experiences, and those stories, those events of experience, are going into this collective in this raw form, and people can pull down whatever elements of those raw experiences that they need for themselves, so that the experiences that you and Tara have, no one will know directly those experiences that you're having. However, people are able to see what's going on, and they're able to connect with the overall energetics that you two are sharing. Mm-hmm. And they're going, hey, they can pull those stories, they can pull those elements into their own lives, and they can start opening up their own experiences for possibilities. And at the same time, it does not cross that line of what's private between you and Tara, and it does not take away from the experience that you two are having. It's kind of a very paradoxical type of way of thinking now.
Yeah, no, and I do agree with what you're saying, because something that I think many of us are experiencing within the UU group, because where are we at now? 2,000 members. I'm pretty sure not all of them are active in the Facebook group itself, but I can pretty much say that most of the active members are very connected with each other, you know, and we all have a great deal of an attachment, a good connection, and a great respect for what each of us brings to the group. And anybody that comes into that group that maybe wants to be involved, but there is no real connection, that, you know, they're very quickly corrected in their attitude. And yeah, you have to behave in a particular way. And that's the way we all like it. We now have a group of people there that it's a small collective, you know, and we all help each other out energetically. And there is a connection that, in the case of Tara and I, has become more personal now, you know, between the two of us. but it started within the UU room itself, and a connection that came from a broadcast on the One People's Roundtable show, probably back in April, I believe, that came from me. So yeah, the energetics of the whole slavery system, it definitely is changing. It has, for us, it's changed because we as a group have moved out of that to some extent, probably a great extent. And many of us are almost completely out of it as much as we possibly can, because we have a complete aversion to anything that relates to authority and the control structure. And that's not because we're just being anti-establishmentarians. We're not. We're just anti that system, that control system.
Carl, can I jump in here for a sec? And I just wanted to say that the concept of aversion to a control system or to authority. I would appreciate authority if it was used correctly, not assumed authority, not authority that has taken it upon itself. If I give someone authority, then I expect them to use it properly, and that I don't have an aversion to. I appreciate that if someone breaks into my house or robs me, that I can go to another group whose purpose is to make sure that happens as little as possible. It's the overreaching result of greed within authority that we have the aversion to.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same concept that you guys have talked about before, of the difference between a police officer and a peace officer. Where
Precisely.
A police officer is enforcing a corporate code or some kind of code that has nothing to do with with helping balance the experience of life. A peace officer is someone that's hopefully trained to say, hold on here, this is how we help balance this out as kind of an independent or objective view. It doesn't mean that he's perfect or anything like that, but at least hopefully they have a vision, some experience, so that they can offer that.
Yeah, I mean, I like peace officers. I'm happy they're there. I appreciate them. I shake their hand. I'll help them any way that I possibly can. It's the people who go beyond that to the authoritarian system, where I'm the boss and you're going to do whatever I bloody well say, rather than you're the boss, how can I help? That's the difference.
Exactly.
And my career as a police officer, spent most of my career as a peace officer. That's the understanding that I joined under, and that's the way I went about my daily duties, much to the annoyance of some of my supervisory officers and some of my fellow officers who many of them were knuckle draggers with limited brains. They knew who they were because I pretty much told them face to face. Didn't go well for my career, but or my health in the end. But that's the way I wanted to live and work. And despite the problems that created in my work environment, I lived my life that way. And it was unfortunate that many of the other people who were in the job who wanted to do the same thing left because they couldn't do it. And in the end, I had to leave.
I absolutely agree. I was a truck driver for like 2 years, and boy, do I appreciate the job that some of those officers are doing. You know, some of them, probably a minority, are screwheads. But I think a lot of them got into that job for a reason. And if the system changes, and I think it is, and they just have, just like everyone else, they have to experience that the system is changing, they'll come into accord real fast. I've also been in corporate for for many years, and there's a lot of very good, very experienced, intelligent people that when the systems start shifting, they're going to jump on it because they don't want to put up with any fuckery. They want to be able to do their job. They want to be able to express their experience and why they got into something in the first place.
Yeah, my frustration though, David, is, and John, you'll know that I've mentioned this in the past. My frustration is that people are not standing up. I stood up within that job, and I spent 13 years actually as a cop, standing up for who I was and how I wanted to do that job, despite my peers and my supervisory officers wanting me to act differently. There are many people that are still in that job or who have joined that job since, who, as you've just pointed out, are good people who joined for the right reason, but they quickly line up with all the other lemmings and carry out the corporate mean, the ideology that's put forward to them, the indoctrination. And that goes for many careers, let's say, not just cops. But, you know, there are businesses that go that route, you know, corporations that go that route. And there are many good people that work. Nursing, healthcare is another one. I mean, holy Christ, healthcare must be one of the greatest callings, let's say, that you can have. And many of the people that work within that job are standing up. I will give them credit. Many people are standing up against what's gone on and what is going on within the healthcare industry. But that must spread, because we can't make this change in the energetics. We can't make even, you know, this concept of money and cryptocurrencies and make that change in how we want to exist when people don't stand up and stand against the indoctrination, the training that says we must do it this way. It's profit against everything else.
Well, there's one thing, like a practical thing that you can do. I have to use a different industry as an example of this. The airline industry in the States was just released now that there's legislation coming out that says you must have a passport for interstate travel. Like if you want to fly from Vegas to New York, you have to have a passport. If people just said no and refused to travel, the airline industry will kick the NSA out. They'll say, look, you guys are destroying our business. Get out. We're done with you. And we, as the population, as the users of these services, ultimately we're in control, if you really think about it. Because, you know, the airline industry, if nobody flew, there wouldn't be an airline industry. If we all took responsibility for our own health, the only purpose that the health industry would have is if you broke a bone or poked a hole in yourself. They would have to change what they do if we put that kind of pressure on them. And I think this is what Carl was touching on is you know, for us to cause the change, we have to take it on ourselves to make that happen. And it's the masses that are going to make the change. It's not you can't expect an industry to change for the better for the masses when it's not in that industry's best interest to do so. So we need to generate the energetic aspects which make it so that it is in the best interest of those industries to do so. Whether it's banking, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's health, food, doesn't matter which industry it is, we ultimately have control of that. And I recognize that a lot of people aren't going to get this right away, but just think about it for a while. You know, pick your whatever industry your concern is about, and think about what would happen if just nobody used it. If everybody did it themselves. You know, if you wanted toast, you didn't buy a toaster, you went and you made a coat hanger to hold your toast and you did it over a fire. The toaster industry would change. It would have to change. Otherwise it would be gone. Simple as that.
Yeah. And that's you know, that is exactly where I was going. It literally is us. We have to be the ones that stand up and do this. And I know there are certain areas that's very difficult to do. I mean, law enforcement and government, the only people that can make the change there are the people that work within that are employed within those areas. We as the people outside, I mean, we could get a ticket off the cop and then we could just post it back to them and say, no contract, fuck off. But how many of us are going to do that? How many know to do that?
Yeah,
exactly.
So it has to come from the people that work within it. And I tried, believe me, I tried. But, you know, it literally is like standing on the beach trying to hold back the ocean. It has to be the ocean itself that says, no, we're not going to pound the beach anymore. That's where it has to go.
Yeah.
So, you know, all those people out there that are working within these industries, you are responsible for making the big changes now. You in government, you work in government, you are the public servants. You are not the authority. You are the servant. You believe that you're in a position of power because you're in government. You are in a position of servant to the people. And you have to get that. You have to understand that.
Yeah.
And the healthcare industry right now, I know that there are lots of changes happening within that, from within the nurses, maybe not so much the doctors, because I think a lot of the doctors get a fiduciary kickback from much of what it is that they do. But the nurses, I mean, they're refusing vaccinations to the extent that they will leave the industry or find somewhere else to work when they are forced to be vaccinated or publicly shamed because they happen to be in a state that, you know, mandatory vaccinations, you know, it's not legislated for mandatory vaccinations so that they can turn it down. But then they must walk around pretty much with a badge or a mask on all day to indicate that they're not vaccinated. But they're actually probably one of the most healthy people in that damned hospital, rather than the ones that have the vaccinations. So, yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. There are changes occurring. We know that. It's just that it has to happen in main areas of society, such as the banking, such as government, such as law enforcement. These are the big controllers of society. And until we do something about that and make the changes from within those industries, from those corporations, entities, we're not going to see any kind of big change. And that's what I've been trying to do, and I know John's been trying to do for a number of years, get to the people that work within these industries so that it can be changed from within. So we put this information out, and, you know, by association, we might end up speaking to somebody that has a husband or a wife that works within these corporations and industries, and that information gets passed to them.
Yeah.
I mean, it just gets to the stage now where it's been forced on us anyway, I think, energetically. So I think that it is going to happen. We just have to be a part of it and not sit back anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was going to say it seems like, I mean, one of the things that I'm looking at is it's not so much saying they or the government or whatever anymore. It's like, okay, well, what about that is messed up? So this is kind of what I'm seeing, and I'm kind of tossing this out as a question also, that you, John, and Carl are both doing is that on the one hand, you're pointing out, hey, this is messed up over here, but there's another element, and this seems to be the stronger element that's kicking in with the new energetics, is how do we move forward? And built into that is how do you redefine that? Danny and Anne on one of their recent health shows made a really beautiful discernment where they're saying, well, hold on here. It's not about Western medicine. There's a lot of really good things about Western medicine. It's about the big pharma that's built into the Western medicine that you need to remove. And how do you do that?
Yeah. And I'd like to get back to the blockchain stuff. Yes, this is all very, very important.
Yes.
But along with that exact question, one thing I was looking at 2 weeks ago when we did the blockchain show was we know that the current ledger for property, for children, for everything, for your car, is in fact a trustee relationship. When you register anything, we assume that it's a ledger to prove that you're the one that is entitled to possess it or hold it, or that it's yours, however you want to look at it. But in fact, what it is you're signing it over to a trustee, and they have ultimate control over that property now. Would the blockchain, in your opinion, would the blockchain technology remove that trustee relationship and or expose it to the extent that nobody is in question anymore?
Absolutely. Basically, with the blockchain, you're moving from a trusted system, which basically states that there is no trust to begin with. You need a third party to help create that validation and verification, which creates that trust. Like for instance, with the SWIFT system in the financial system, which all financial transactions run on the SWIFT system. SWIFT system, for those that don't know, is basically a messaging system that a transaction was started, it was received, and there's a validation that it was completed. That's basically, in a nutshell, all the SWIFT system does. It's the same thing like with title trust for mortgages. You're hiring a third-party company to verify title and who the title is going to, and that transaction's been completed. With the blockchain, you're removing all of that. You're going into what's called a trustless system. And trust is already built in. You don't have to think about it at all. That's basically what's going on. It's like, and I know, John, you'll get this, in computer networking, there are things called certificates which act as that third party in a network. If you did not have that, we would not be talking on the computers at all. Many of the applications on your computer would not work. They rely to check in with these certificates to make sure that everything's copacetic and that the timing is correct and that the validation and verification that communication is supposed to happen over a network. With a trustless system, you can get rid of that third party completely because there's a system of validation and verification that is already built in. That's huge. That changes the game completely. Does that make any sense?
Oh, it certainly makes sense to me.
On the network, sorry, it does. I just wanted to kind of touch on that certification thing to kind of flesh it out a little bit, because what you're referring to there was the SSL certification for communication, where typically what it does, one side or one computer on the network will try and talk to another computer on a network. Both of them must have public and private components of that SSL certificate, so that when it gets sent out, it checks against the certificate, which is issued by a third party, to say that this is okay, this communication is using the right key, and it can continue and reach the other side, and then that process comes back again the other way.
Yeah, that this is actually the computer you are talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But a third party is basically saying that this has been checked with them and everything is okay.
Right.
With the crypto, or not the cryptocurrency, with the blockchain, you are in essence talking down a cable from one computer to the other computer. The whole thing is encapsulated and secure from one side to the other, and there is no third-party check. It's just a cable, a connection between the two computers that is totally secure and trustworthy the whole way, and no third party involved.
So David, would you consider the blockchain technology to be moving these transactions from what is typically considered public to a private transaction system? I know that the ledger is public, but the actual transaction itself would simply be between two parties. They agree, everything's done. There's no usurper that can come in and charge them rent on what they believe to be their own property, as far as the housing system goes, because property taxes, rent. If you read your documentation you have with your house, if you own a house, it's written, you're written into it as a tenant. You don't own it because you've signed it away to this third party. And would you say that the blockchain would eliminate that?
Ultimately, yes. We're looking at two different systems. One is the public blockchain. Like, for instance, there is a company that is doing their certifications for ships and offshore drilling rigs, that you want those certifications public so that you can indeed verify, anyone can verify that the inspections have been done, that the ship is good to sail, and whoever is doing the inspections, it's like, they have that information immediately. You're not requiring a third party to house those certifications. They're immediate, and that's a good reason to have that public access. Now, what you're talking about in more of the private, interaction, like with a tenant, there's some big lawful questions that are going in that. What do you keep? What information about someone's private data do you keep private, and what's open? And the monetary transaction, sure, that needs to be open.
Well, what I was pointing to here was, for example, I want to go buy 100 acres. And I go to the farmer and say, I understand you've got this 100 acres in the back that you're not using. I'd like to buy it. And he says, okay, well, here's the price, whatever the price is, we agree on. We do the ledgering through the blockchain rather than through the government, which would actually, in truth, be a more lawful way to do it. because
Yes.
it can't be messed with. There's no chance for error. You can't have a clerical error. It's a better way to do it. My ultimate question is, now that that is done, and that would be a private transaction. That would be no different than me buying a tomato from the farmer.
Right.
Would you now have recourse or the ability to tell the government, look, you are not involved in this. This is a private transaction.
Well, it'll just fall off. It just as a matter of course, because those elements of government that are trying to impose their will and say, well, we need to track this, and everyone's going, well, no, you don't, because we already have a system that's doing this for it. So people are evolving out of the need of those elements of government that are doing that.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, we're still going to need, government, or the lawful system, because people are having experience, and so there might be disputes or things like that. You might need a mediator to help the languaging between parties, but a whole thing of just look at people's car registration. On the one hand, if a car is out on the road, you want to make sure that car has been checked, that it's safe to drive, that it's not going to blow up like a bomb or anything like that. That's a valid reason to have a government or a third party to check the car to make sure that it's going to be okay. And
well, this is one of the things we've discussed in the past, David, that government itself, both John and I have, agree, and many of the people that we've done things with the World Freeman Society and other societies in the past, all agree that government itself isn't a bad thing. What unfortunately has happened is that the processes of government have been usurped and changed into the transference of property and rights to the detriment of the people.
Yeah.
So in effect, government and the system in place actually is a good thing. We just need to turn it back to what it should be, which is a regulatory body of some sort that allows the functioning of society and commerce to take place between the people. And if something should go awry, then it should be there to help one or the other of the parties concerned. Yeah. It should not be there to remove the rights and the property and the ownership and take authority over everything else, which is what's happened over the last few hundred years, probably longer.
Yeah.
But definitely more so in more recent years. This last 100 years has been a complete removal of almost everybody's rights, to the extent that, once you're born and registered, you're automatically transferred into the state project. And you have no rights.
Yeah, you're considered property of the state at that point. Something you brought up, David, about, like for a car, safety certifications for the car. Now, if it's in a public system, you have to go and have somebody else check it. In a private system, you're personally liable for that car. If you take the automobile out and it has faulty brakes and you cause an accident, you are fully liable for that accident. There's no protections, and that's where I'd like this to go, where the people, by simply accepting that they are acting in their own full personal liability, they're going to voluntarily make sure that their systems are safe and correct, rather than being forced to do so by a third party. And I really think that this is where we need to move this to. And I think by having I guess with the blockchain as a starting point, where these transactions are private, it's simply a ledger, so that if there's a dispute, you can say, yes, I'm actually the owner of this automobile or this piece of property or whatever, because that's what the registration is supposed to be. But they accept full liability for their actions. They're going to make sure their sidewalks are clean in the wintertime. They're going to make sure their steps are safe and that they're not going to cause problems simply because that is the right thing to do, not because they're being forced to do it.
Well, basically, the insurance would cease to exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To an extent that it does now, anyway. There may well be small requirements for insurance, but to be honest, I'm not sure what they would be. But yeah, the insurance industry is one of the biggest problems that we have because nobody has or accepts liability and responsibility for their own actions. It's just, well, insurance will take care of it.
Well,
House burns down. Don't worry about it.
I was given a free accident. I got a letter from ICBC that says you're now a road star, and if you happen to kill somebody, don't worry about it because your rates aren't going up. Like, that's ridiculous.
Basically the insurance game is basically gambling.
Yes.
And basically what they did was you're in the casino and John, they gave you a free chip.
They did.
To gamble with.
They did, because I didn't use their services for 15 years. I never had a claim on anything. Because I'm fully personally liable for my actions. I knew that since I was a kid. And the reward was I can go kill somebody and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean that personal liability thing. One, with the blockchain, you're removing the government's ability to get in that process of people having experience. Now, hopefully, it'll be a smoother transition as possible. But that's the hurdle that I believe a lot of people are going to be running into, and it doesn't matter if it's money, registering your car, or whatever. Is that they're discovering, oh, I am responsible for what goes on in my life. You can't just be dismissive and hand this off to some innocuous entity anymore. Mm-hmm. Someone has skin in the game. They are responsible for what they are doing. Yeah, that's going to be a huge hurdle.
Yeah, Shaban, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She asked, how I think it is. So how can a property already stuck in the system be converted into a blockchain and thus clear the tentacles that are taking it on? That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for it. I don't think anybody has an answer at this time. I know lots of
answer.
Well, I know lots of people who have tried to deregister and pull their property out of the system, and it was an absolute nightmare, and I don't know anybody who's actually accomplished it.
Well, one of the things that just happened, the end of last year, the beginning of this year, and this is probably how all of this is probably going to play out, is that India went and devalued one of their currencies, and everyone in India, and we're talking about 1.3 billion people, had to go and trade their old currencies in, and they could only trade so much for a new currency. And basically the new currency is tied in with the digital system, and I think it's tied in with the blockchain. Basically, that's the same thing as anyone in the United States and the world that's using $100 bills. All of a sudden, the United States is saying, we're devaluing the $100 bill. You have 50 days to trade all of your $100 bills in for this new digital currency. And Russia is talking about doing that with the crypto ruble. Now, the big question on everyone's mind is, well, you're talking about a government agency, and they're involved in fuckery. And so no one really knows is this just a re-co-opting of the old system, or is this actually a piece that's helping move everyone forward? No one knows, because no one can trust these entities.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the worries that me personally, and I'm sure John and others have too, that whatever we move to isn't just slavery 2.0 dressed up
Exactly.
as something nice.
Yeah. But
Um, so that's
that's
one thing that we want to become aware of. We want
right.
to have the information and get the information out to the people, simply because we don't want slavery 2.0. We want to know if this is just slavery dressed up nicely as a brand new geisha girl, or is it, is it something completely different? And unless we know this, it's impossible for us to judge.
Mhm.
We don't know what we don't know, so
Yeah.
we have to find out, so that when the change occurs, or the attempt at the change occurs, then we have to be conversant with what it is that's being changed to, and then react accordingly.
Mhm. Yeah. But
So is it
that's
slavery? Well, if it's slavery 2.0, fuck you, we're not interested, go away.
right.
We want nothing to do with this, and we're going to make sure everybody out there knows that this is just slavery 2.0.
Right.
Or are we going to say, well, yeah, this is actually a good thing, and we should adopt this?
Right. And
It doesn't necessarily answer Siobhan's question, though, which is, really how does anybody get out of the current system? And unfortunately, if you already own property, um, well, there isn't any way that you can get out of it unless you sell that property, for whatever value you can get right now, um, and then move to a location that, the property registration index isn't quite so closely monitored, and the taxation system doesn't, cost you $6,000-7,000 a year just to live in the goddamned house.
right. Yeah. But
There are countries in the world where it only costs you $100 for your property taxes for the year.
Yeah.
Big difference.
yeah.
I wouldn't care paying property taxes as if it only cost me $100, dollars a year. But if I have to pay $7,000 a year, well, excuse me, local government, go fuck yourself, because emptying my bins does not cost $7,000 a year. You sure as hell don't do much on my roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that gets into that whole thing of, and I'm going to jump off here shortly. I know a lot of what I'm talking about really needs to be in this other energetic show that I would really love to jump in, because that's where a lot of my foundation for the information that I'm playing off of actually exists. So I didn't mean to take away from that, but as far as the India thing, that's one of the ways that you move people from, open cashless system where there's no tracking to a potential blockchain system.
Yeah.
Is you just pull the pin and let people deal with it.
yeah, the end result, though, for India is that we still don't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, because the people seem to have got well and truly screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the people did. So, yeah, the jury's still out on
Right.
what happened in India, as far as I'm concerned, anyway.
And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying, here's this event. Here's some of the things that I'm seeing about it, and I think that gets back to a lot of what we're talking about, which is no one knows how this is going to go. Not even the controllers or co-opters or them or whoever. Everyone is in completely new territory here.
Yeah, and that's again that's part of the worry, because I think India potentially, like many things, was a localized experiment to see, how something could play out. And because it was India, the part of the BRICS system, but are they part of or sufficiently apart from the cabal controlled system to say that this was an experiment on the good side? Or, is it just another government controlled by the controllers, and they decided that India was going to be the experiment because, well, fuck it, the people are poor anyway. getting them to be a bit poorer while we do this isn't really going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
But try and pull that stunt in the US, and I'm sure there'd be revolution by, 3 hours into the project.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, especially since people's regular money and the petrodollar are inherently tied together.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think if they're going to be moving in a positive direction, they have to separate those two things out, so that people's regular spending cash is working on the same level where hopefully it is on the rest of the world, and it's not tied into this huge petrodollar control system.
Most definitely. Well, thank you very much,
sure.
David. Thank you so much
You're
for your
welcome.
time. If you'd like to come back next week, we can dive down the energetic aspect of this and go crazy with that.
Yeah, because I've been looking at the actual physics of this, and the whole one of the reasons why the blockchain is so exciting is because it's actually tied into this new reality that I'm seeing that we're in, and this new reality has completely different physics that's in play that wasn't in play before, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going like, oh, we're moving forward. Messy, but we're moving forward.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's such a wonderful thing to watch happen too, because I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Ditto.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna drop off. Thank you all for your time and your.
Oh, thank you, David. I appreciate having somebody come in, their viewpoint, and thanks very much for doing so. It's good to have guests, let's say, come in and bring their views. Really, by all means, come back, because
I
it's
will
good
be
for
back
you.
next week.
It's good for the guests, and it's good for everybody else that listens. So again, thank you again, David. Much appreciated.
All right, have a good day, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.
And Mark, thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that David had limited time, so it worked out, I hope. Anyway, back to your question. I watched your videos and loved them to pieces. I sent a couple of requests out. Some other folks in your area to look at your videos and offer support as much as they possibly can. And I sent a request to the anonymous group that handle England as well. And I haven't heard back from them. I don't know what's going to happen there. But the one fella I did send a request to, he said, yes, he'll watch the videos and he'll do what he can. So you may have some support coming shortly. Who knows? And his mic's muted.
Yeah, I don't know. He's probably listening in the background and too far away. Mark.
There he is.
Comment. Oh, there you go. Oh, now we can't hear Mark.
This is live TV. Here we go. And now he can't hear us.
Yes, because he's put his headset mute on. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So the blockchain stuff, watch this space, because this is going to get really interesting as this grows and as more information comes out on this. I don't know where it's going to go. I can see where it could go and some possibilities behind it, which are really exciting. Hopefully we'll get there. I don't know.
Well, as we've discussed, things are changing a lot. Energetically, things are changing. People are changing. Their discriminatory powers are kind of changing. Their ability to deal with the mainstream media now is changing. There are a lot of people that still believe the bull crap, and I see that every day, but there are far more people now who are able to call out the crap that's showing up on news, in quotes, than ever before. and there are people that are calling out the system in many different ways. It's literally, it's like the analogy that people have used in the past, that, you know, the tighter that you grip something, the more falls through it. And that very much feels like the authoritarians are tightening their grip as much as they can, but in the process of doing that, more and more people are slipping through.
Mm-hmm.
And they're realizing that the grip is tightening and are trying to do something to, I guess, fight back against it. And I think that's, to some extent, I think that's what has to be done. This isn't about the love and light language, the love and light brigade, what's the other meme they use it? The new age, turn the other cheek, you know, sitting in a lotus position or whatever and contemplate your navel, and if somebody slaps you one cheek, you turn the other one and let them slap the other. No, that's not my viewpoint on this. Yes, you can show love. If somebody slaps your cheek, then fucking slap them back, because you're allowed to defend yourself. And that's my view on it. I'm sorry. And that has upset some people. Oh, no, you can't do that. You've got to be love. Well, yeah, I am love. But if somebody punches me in the mouth, I'm going to punch them back. And I give it with love, in the hope that you won't do it to me again. Because if you do, I'll punch you again. That's just...
Yeah, I've been there, and I can certainly see the concept of fighting back, but I also recognize one of the teachings of, I believe it was Bruce Lee, who said the best way not to get hit is not be there. And you know, if one of the things that's come up a lot, especially with contracts, is if they bring the contract to you, you can really screw with them. If you're seeking their services, there's not nearly so much you can do. But you've always got the option to say no. If they bring it to you, you've got the option to say no. No thanks. Goodbye. You know, no, there's no fight. There's no argument. It's just no thanks.
Yeah.
But I hear, Mark, hey, Quacks, you got your mic working now, because I can hear all kinds of myself coming back.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just your speakers are a little bit loud. That's all.
Right, I'll take them down. How's that?
That's a little better. So how's it going over there on the other side of the pond?
Oh, where do I start? No, it's not where do I start. It's a case of digging in, because all sorts of shit has just come up, and they don't want to back down. Well, nor do I, to tell you the truth, because of what we've been through. And the matter of the fact is that I had to get hold of their corporate solicitors, and I got hold of this guy who I didn't realise when I was talking to him on the phone that he was the same guy that was in the courts, who was trying to intimidate me, until our Lisa turned around and said, well, that's that, you know, weasel, so to speak. And as soon as she said that, that was it. Anyway, I got on the phone to him, and I says, you was the same person that was in the courtroom, weren't you? Sitting down with Miriam Stacey, acting for the claimants. He says, yes, I was. I said, so you've written a statement to the high courts, right, and you've committed perjury. He says, why? I said, well, because you've mentioned none of what we did at the courtroom door. You know, when we challenge jurisdiction, the jurisdiction has to be proven on and for the record. Where's all that? Oh, that never happened. I said, but it did happen. He said, I said, look, did it happen or not? He said, well, it did happen, but the judge has jurisdiction. I said, the judge never had jurisdiction. I said, so you've applied to the high courts for, what is it, a sheriff to come down and remove me and my family from the house. Well, one, we've contacted them and they don't want nothing to do with it. 2, we contacted the High Courts and they know nothing about it. 3, they're sending us letters saying that we've contacted the High Courts and the Sheriff. And I said to this guy, I said, you're talking out your backside again. I said, what is really going off? I said, because if you want me to publicise that all over you're damn right I will. Because you have committed perjury. But one thing what got me, John and Carl, is that when we challenged the jurisdiction and he couldn't prove it, then he turned around and said, we said, look, we have a lawful right for, to establish jurisdiction. And the judge turning around to us and saying, well, you have no lawful rights. Well, I was quite gobsmacked, to tell you the truth. But this solicitor of theirs, this corporate solicitor, saying the judge always has jurisdiction. I said, no, we don't. Not if it's challenged. So where we are at the moment is that we're still here and we're still digging in. How? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the concept that the judge always has jurisdiction is technically correct. What jurisdiction are they talking about? Does he have jurisdiction over a rodent? Is it admiralty? Is it common law? Is it a Sharia law? Is it Napoleonic law? What system of law are you working with? This is the question. This is the question, because he has jurisdiction over himself. So yes, he always has jurisdiction in a really broad sense.
This is what we said to him, the judge at the time. And Lisa, completely threw it back at him and says, we're not stepping into your admiralty jurisdiction anyway. We're trying to establish common law jurisdiction. And he says, well, I don't recognise common law jurisdiction. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but that's the very foundation of the law system, is common law. So where you got that from, I don't know. But this is it. He knew that we was challenging admiralty law. So, I mean, I just don't get why this solicitor, I can understand in a sense that why all these solicitors do push you for everything that you want to get and try and buckle you under. But we're still here.
Yep.
I'm going to do another video.
One of the things that I've kind of been aware of as far as the judges and the solicitors and lawyers are concerned is that if they don't see it, they don't talk about it, then it didn't happen, which is why I mentioned to you that anything that you do in the courtroom or outside the courtroom for that matter, as long as it involves the case, you have to make sure it's on the record. And even then, you have to be very careful about how the judge deals with it, because I'm very aware that they will hold up your paperwork and they'll show it to you. This is your paperwork, yeah, and they'll put it down in front of them. But what they will do is they'll put it upside down and they'll look at it, and to them it's a blank sheet of paper, and they'll say, I don't see anything on here. I don't see what it is you're asking for. He did not lie.
That's right.
Because what he looked at was a blank sheet of paper. That's all he saw. And just as something as simple as that can throw you. I mean, you could just say, well, which side of the paper are you looking at? And then he'll really shit himself.
But that's... Sorry, I mean...
oh, no, laugh. Enjoy yourself, because that's
the best.
That's right.
It is, I mean, it's been hard in a sense that we've not experienced this, we didn't want to go down this road, but we've had to go down this road for, the lawful rights that we have and how they're deceiving people and, and using trickery and their kind of word magic to deceive us. Well, I was having none of it. And Lisa was having none of it as well. So I can understand why you can't see any of their paperwork, because their desk is a lot higher than yours. So you're not going to go and see them papers, are you, Carl? So
exactly.
So you don't know where you are at that at the present time, but still digging in and throwing in some lawful questions. And when he turned round to me and Lisa and said, "Look, you know, if you don't come in, I'm going to go to the next level." Well, I laughed. I said, "What's that?" He said, "Civil. I'm going to have you contempt of court." And I said, "Is that civil or criminal?" That's when he blew his lid, and he got up and he left. But I can't understand that even their solicitors on the phone, I recorded it as well.
Good.
He says, yeah, it did happen. I said, so why didn't you put it in the High Court witness statement that you sent? He said, and that's committing perjury, John. Surely it is.
No, it's not, because it's not. Omission is not a lie.
Right.
It's not the whole truth, but it's not a lie. If he puts that in a statement that says this did not happen in a response to something that you said, that is a lie and that is perjury. But omission is not lying.
Yep. So
and that's what I just said to you. If
I
they
would,
don't, if what they don't see, what they don't say, isn't on the record, and in that case, it didn't and doesn't happen.
yeah,
That's the way the law works.
what you're going to have to do.
You can prove that.
Well, what you're going to have to do is get him to get him to either confirm or deny in writing, if you can. The phone record that you have it's valuable, certainly, and it does have some power, but not as much as if you were if you could pin him down in writing. How to do that, I'm not really sure. One way to do it would be.
I have on that, John. I just wanted to jump in there because Mark and Lisa had submitted a motion to set aside the judgment.
Yeah.
I think part of that motion should have also included an affidavit of the events of the court or the date of the court in an affidavit format stating what occurred. And this is the reason for setting aside the motion. They have to answer an affidavit.
What about the witness statement, Paul?
Witness statement, yeah, see, a witness statement is in addition. A witness statement adds to the motion, but the motion itself must be complete.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the witness statements are irrelevant because what the witness is witnessing, there's nothing in the motion.
Yeah, something
So
that
they're totally separate.
Something that comes to mind. This may throw a wrench in the works. It may add a whole lot more work on your side, Mark. But taking a page from Heather's book, the way she dealt with the court, because she basically had the same argument. They have no jurisdiction. When she quashed the case, when she filed her paperwork to make this all go away, she didn't file a motion. She filed a precipice, which is a completely different thing. It's an actual order. A precipice is an order to the court to stop, to cease and desist. Whereas a motion is a request to the court. You're still if you file a motion, you're still assuming the court has jurisdiction, which this may be an issue jump up on you. Have a look at the paperwork that Heather filed. You can get it on i-uv.com. All of the paperwork is there, and you can read through what she did as a former lawyer who knows the system inside and out, and how she dealt with the lack of jurisdiction issue. You may find a remedy in there as well.
Yeah. Just on what the last night, what you was talking there, we did file to set aside, and we put the application in, and it cost us, money again. But the funny thing about it, I had to laugh at this, is because it went back to the circuit judge, Gregory, who got this in the first place and passed it on to Judge Bull, who reserved it for himself. So when what was that we actually said as well? We put in a request, an application as well. You know, remember the time I turned round and says about they don't want to litigate anymore? We actually filed that in the court. Mm-hmm. And we actually filed the, what was it again? I've lost it. Oh, God, there's so much going off. They don't want to litigate no more, so case closed. Well, of course, it's gone back to Judge Gregory, and he's looked at it, and he's gone, well, stop this. And he says, we were wasting court time. I said, pardon? No, the abuse of court time. Well, establishing your lawful rights, that's abusing the court's time, is it? I actually laughed at him. So I've already turned around to their solicitors and that lot. I said, I'll go in. I said, because it's not lawful. And if you want to get people round here, by all means, because I will have all my cameras on. And I'll stand there at the gate, me and Lisa. Just remember, we've got a place to go. Somebody stepped in. And God bless him as well. Another farmer as well. I don't believe this. But he's got a place that he's bought out for us and so forth. It's got fields. It's got stables for the horses, and but it needs a lot of work doing to it. But I'm not bothered, right? Because I'll do it. But in the meantime, we're shifting everything out of this place. But I'm keeping the bare minimum here, so I can, you know, I'll sleep on the floor and so forth, because I want them to serve them papers. And as soon as they serve them papers, then I get a right to go and stand in front of the High Court judge and plead my case again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the story so far, but it's frustrating that these people are just sticking together in that lot. And, you know, money does talk. And you was talking earlier on about, you know, corporations, you know, doing the right thing and so forth, then falling into the, you know, their net. And it is. And the amount of solicitors and barristers that we've been to, not one of them have backed our case.
Yep. Another thing that you might want to look at is the concept of criminal trespass, where it applies to your inalienable rights, such as the right to establish jurisdiction. If they refuse you that rights, that is in fact criminal trespass, and that is quite a powerful thing to use.
Have you got any links onto that, John?
For Britain, no. I didn't do a whole lot of digging in Britain law. I mean, in Canada, there's a place called Canlii, CANLII, where you can go and look at the legislation, and then you cross-reference that with the legal dictionaries and various other areas. But the concept of criminal trespass, where it applies to rights, because rights are your property. And it's no different than somebody stealing your car.
All right.
Yeah, when just on that concept there of property, when we're going to the US here, but when they brought out the Declaration of Independence, they brought out what was the Constitution as well. They mention in that the rights of freedom, so on, but they also mention about property. But that has been further established that property means exactly what John just mentioned there. Property is rights. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean the car. It doesn't mean your house. It doesn't mean stuff you own. It means a whole hell of a lot more. And rights being the biggest one. That's what they refer to in the wordage of property. So again, legalese kind of trickery going on a little bit, because it kind of misdirects you in what you actually have a right to. You have a right to your rights.
Well, that's it.
They put that under a bigger heading of property.
But didn't they change the Constitution?
Well,
by one word.
The Constitution doesn't apply to regular Joes. The Constitution is
but it's just a way that they use, which is kind of why I brought it up.
It's the limiting documentation of government. Okay, this is their law. This is the stuff they can't breach. That's what the Constitution is. And so when you bring up, I've got constitutional rights, no, you don't. No. The government has constitutional limits. That's the difference. So be very aware of this. If you say you have constitutional rights, they're going to laugh at you and throw the book at you, because that's not going to happen. But if you phrase it that the Constitution limits their power, that's a whole different ball of wax.
See, it's legalese, though, isn't it? I mean, you've just got to know it.
Yeah, understanding the wording, understanding how they put these concepts together, it is really tough. But it's also really possible to do this without using any of that. And we had a fellow on Vancouver Island who went through a very similar thing. He's a subsistence hunter, lives on the land, has his own house, built his, he doesn't bother anybody. He lives lawfully, lives in the old ways. And the powers that were came and took his plants, took all his guns, took all his ammunition, all of this stuff. Got a hold of the World Freeman Society. We coached him a little bit. He eventually wrote a letter which simply stated, I've looked through your body of words, which you call law, and I don't see within it the love, truth, honesty, justice. Therefore, it cannot be my law. And within a couple of weeks, he got all his guns and his ammo and everything back. So you don't have to go through all of the craziness of this. It can be done very, very simply, but it has to be from your heart. It has to be powerful, and it has to be real and truthful. Now, again, this isn't going to work for everybody. I think this is probably an isolated case, but it does illustrate the fact that it can be a simple thing if you do it right. Now,
I think as well, it also depends on the financial gain of the other side. As far as the guy down in Vancouver was concerned, it was a few guns and ammunition and allowing him the ability to hunt and live in the woods. They said, not worth our time.
Exactly.
As Mark's pointed out, when this project is for housing for thousands and thousands and is worth, £6 billion worth to somebody or many, then, as Mark already pointed out, money does talk.
Yeah.
And they will move mountains, and literally they have the equipment to dig through a goddamn mountain.
Yeah, well, Heather's bill for her incarceration is in excess of $46 quintillion. You want to talk about getting a financial slap?
Yeah, but again, how does anybody, whether there's a financial fee schedule, if there's a fee schedule in place, how do you even go about enforcing it?
Well, I think
you can place liens, but
in Heather's case, I don't think it's a matter of enforcement. It's a matter of it having that over their heads forever now, because it's always going to be on the books, and 5 years from now, somebody can look at it and go, "Wow, how did you get a $46 quintillion bill?" Even though it's not actually settled, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, unless they can do some fancy accounting, which they do.
That's just it, Cole, because they can. If it's a government involved, they will go out their way. They'll bribe. It's word of mouth. And the thing is, you can stand there and argue the fact that you are right. Now, they can turn around and say, and throw it right in your... But, you know, I will take it down to the last... If it means me getting arrested, so be it. But I'm not going to get arrested because I'm defending my law. And you're talking about the two roles of police, and that's so true as well. And I'll challenge the police on that. I says, well, you're under your oath, so you protect the people and their property. You have no lawful rights to go, to have a go. In fact, I was talking to a police officer the other day, and he's a friend who I served with. And it's like I said before, he knows every little bit of this. And when he got called into the MP's office, because me and Lisa wrote him a letter to say, why didn't you step in and do, this, that and the other, it's massive. And he turned around, phoned the police up, and the police turned up at his office because Charlie told me this. And he says, well, I think this needs to go to special branch. Well, I am honoured. And Charlie said to the MP, he said, well, I mean, all he's doing is defending his lawful rights. He says, well, I've read this email. He says, well, what's wrong with this? Well, I think it has to go to special branch because of what I hold. And they're all trying to say that this insurance fraud hasn't happened. Well, I've got it right in front of me. And it states who's involved and that lot. And the thing is, the government's involved in this. So they will push mountains to go and throw you away. But I'm not giving up that easy.
No, well, like we've said, the best thing, and you're doing it, is to put enchilada now, because you've gone through their legal system to try and uphold your position under contract law, and it's been overturned. It's been ignored. Never mind overturned. It's been ignored. They've not even put it on record. And the whole process, as far as they're concerned, is how they can legally show that they've done the process and followed the procedures required under the law to legally turf you out of the property. To the extent that and they do that too, because they do it with foreclosures, residential. In your circumstance, it's not a foreclosure; it's a breaking of a contract.
That's true.
And it's a private contract. So how the legal justice system can get involved in that, well, realistically, the only way they can become involved is if the parties agree. And the fact that legal proceedings started and then continued showed the agreement. And that, to some extent, I think, is where the courts are trying to justify that they've got jurisdiction, because everybody agreed to have the courts adjudicate this, until you turned around and said, no, we're challenging jurisdiction, which, of course, jurisdiction can be challenged at any time, although it just makes it a little harder for you to prove it after you've gone through weeks and weeks or more of actual legal proceedings. And that's one of the reasons, I think, why the judge can turn around and say, well, you just wasted court time. Because technically, I think what he was saying is, well, if you had a query on jurisdiction, why didn't you bring it up at the beginning?
Well, that's just it, Carl. But Carl, that's what we did. We put an application in for it way before the court hearing.
Yeah.
And way before the court hearing, and he totally ignored it. We actually put an application cost us £255. And they're just robbing money off you. And he didn't bother replying to that. We kept sending him letters, everything to, please answer our applications. And he denied it. So we did challenge the jurisdiction. And he should have said, well, because it's like jurisdiction, it can be challenged at any time, and you have to prove it on and for the record. If you can't prove jurisdiction, you can't pass down merit, or you can't do nothing. So how the hell?
Standing.
No standing. That's true. That's correct. Sorry. So I can see your point why they're doing it, right? Because it's massive. But the thing is, they could have turned around in my and said, look, this is, big. Blah, blah, blah. We'll settle your bill and that's that, right? Because it's just money that they owe us, right? That's it. And it's our lawful right to have that money, because it wasn't our responsibility to, put into the property, which it was their responsibility by law. So the thing is, I said to the judge, he says, I'm here to pass down judgment. Well, we wasn't in the court. We were standing by the door. And I said to him, well, I'm sorry, sir, but you can't pass down judgment because a letter, an order passed down on a certain date and so forth, that this hearing was adjourned part heard. So how can you pass down judgment? He didn't like the questions, and it's like John was saying before, you use the system against them and they don't bloody like it.
No.
So here we go. I'll stand. I will stand, although we've got another place to go. God, I do
I'm glad
believe
to hear that, Mark. I really am.
Yeah, well, it's stepped out. It's come out of the blue. This one is, but it doesn't stop me from getting what my lawful rights are, our family, and how, and what you just said there, John, as well. They're guilty by proxy by not putting it on record, because they are covering the tracks up. Because this story is so huge. I mean, I've got a guy out in Spain called Peter, absolute brilliant. He's been helping me with letters as well, because he's a rather clued up bloke, corporate fella. But I'm very good friends with him. And he said, Mark, the amount of information that you put down, it's enough to sink a battle cruiser, right? This will bring down government.
Yeah.
Then I've actually got do you know what made me laugh the other day? The housing minister came over. He flew over in his helicopter and landed just over on the other, where the development site is. Well, me and the dog, we was outside, sorry. Well, the helicopter took off again and come round the farm, just started hovering around the. So I was giving them a good wave, the Queen's wave and so forth. And we found out in a local paper that it was a housing minister and all their bosses. And little did he realise that 2 days after that, we've sent him an email to the housing minister and saying to him what is really going on. And we've not just stopped there, we've gone to everybody and we've included everybody. So if they're going to ignore this, they better do it in good, because I'm going to publicise this as much as I can, because it's the only thing I can do.
Yeah.
I haven't got the money to take them on.
Well, the one last thing that comes to mind, is do the same thing Heather's done, is basically, and John, you can agree or not on this one, but they have to have some kind of legal process now against them that says, well, you owe me money, so I'm filing the tort complaint against you for £2.5 million. And here's all the evidence.
I think you're in a good position to go on the offensive here. The only thing about that is it's gonna cost money to do. That's how their system works. It's whoever has the most money wins. And if we can come up with a way to do this that's not going to cost you a tremendous amount of money, I'd like to go that route. That's why I suggested going public, because it's cheap to do. And I figured that as soon as they saw this information was going out into the public, they would have caved. I'm surprised they didn't.
Well, put it this way, John. When I was talking to their corporate solicitor on the phone, he did turn around. I said, "Do you realise that this is actually being publicised?" He said, "Pardon?" And he was quite surprised in his voice.
Oh.
I know how people talk in their voices, you know, whether they're, you know, lying or whatever. But he was surprised, and all of a sudden, I've got on some of the places that I go on, their corporations hitting them and having a look. So something's going off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I noticed on your videos, I've watched your videos on YouTube, and the numbers were pretty low. So I wasn't sure if I figured they were probably following it. I'm sure they had somebody watching you closely. But
Yeah, well,
they may be
on
so
LinkedIn.
they may be so arrogant that they just think they can ignore you, and this that sort of upholds that a little bit, that they didn't think you were going to do something like this. So now that they know, that may be a game changer. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening. But I'm still fighting on, and I won't until I do get some kind of justice. You know, it's our human right. And the more I listen to this show, the more, you know, it just fires me up, and it gives me more confidence to find out and dig more on about what's right and wrong.
Yep.
And I'd love the system to change, but you know, it's going to take a long time for that system to change, and a lot of people.
Yeah,
well, it takes a lot of people, not necessarily a long.
That's true.
What we're hoping.
That's true.
One thing that I just wanted to point out as well, Mark, you mentioned about the police that turn up. You need to make sure that any police that turn up at your gate, you ask them straight away, are they there to assist the bailiffs, or are they there to prevent a breach of the peace? In other words, are they acting as a peace officer?
Yeah.
If they are there to prevent a breach of the peace, then you remind them of that, and that the breach of the peace can be committed by anybody, including the police, and you have to remind them of that. Secondly, if they say they are there to assist bailiffs, then you tell them that should you step on this property, it will be considered trespass, and you will defend yourself, and that includes the police again. They have no rights of entry unless there is a warrant, and again, they have to show you that warrant. They don't have to give it to you, but they do have to show it to you, and you can point out that there's no signature on that warrant, no real signature of a judge. And because it's not signed, it's not valid either. And should anybody step onto your property with a warrant that's unsigned and not legal, you will then be taking further action against anybody involved. And that includes complaints against police officers for acting unlawfully, because they are then proceeding without confirming their legal right to do so.
Yeah, I can concur with that.
Yeah, just some things to kind of to think on.
Because Charlie's told me that already. I mean, he keeps telling me every time that he rings me up and I ring him, and he says, "Look, listen, Mark, I'm not questioning what you know, Carl, because I know you're a police constable, not an officer." I'll get that.
Yeah.
He says the police have no rights, and if you challenge them, what you've just told me, Mark, I mean, they're going to run a mile. But you've seen these YouTube videos, so you know that I will defend my lawful rights, you know, with peace.
Yep.
Yeah, you just have to remind them before the fact, rather than having to remind them as they're jumping over your gate and fence and trying to arrest you on your own property, you know.
Shooting you with it.
At that point, sorry, I was going to say they've already made the decision at that point, and to suddenly turn around and jump back onto the public roadway, kind of embarrassing for a cop to do that. So
Well, they've got the doctor to deal with, so he's going to be standing with me. So they're not going to jump the fence. I'm not going to use
that
him
helps
as a
a lot.
weapon, but he's a very good deterrer. I mean, he's a big German Shepherd and he's an exile. Thank you, son.
Yeah, lots of teeth, and yeah, I know. I used to train with them, so.
Anyway, but thanks for listening. I will be next week if it's on, and if I get any more, and I'll just type it in and say, look, I'll be doing another video. This is quite important, this video, because it's proof on how solicitors use other solicitors, and I had the very proof of bribery. So that'll be the next one.
Just be careful how you phrase in that particular because they're very good at using the law.
Don't put anything in the video that you can't absolutely back up, especially when you're taking on lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, what I did, I've been wanting to do this for about 2 months, but I've actually sat back, got all the information out, and the way that I'm going to do this is actually use the information that I've got with the emails, the proof of the emails. I'm not going to go and overstep the mark because I know what they'll do. I've had the experience with what they can do, and judges. Mm-hmm. So I just want to make a point to people in this video that, you know, just never trust a solicitor or barrister. Oh, God.
Well, we've over the years we've become very aware that solicitors and barristers and lawyers in general, their first duty is to the court.
Yeah,
that is their first duty. Their client is actually well down the list. So, you know, the second duty is to the law itself, which is actually very closely tied to each other. So they will defend the court first and foremost before they will even defend the law. And then, you know, maybe you're fourth. You know, they'll defend other things before they'll defend you as the client. So you have to be, everybody has to be aware of that. So yeah, the legal system, well, we all have our thoughts on that. Anyway, I know we're actually a little over here, John. Done well today. So I think we probably want to bring it to a close, and we can carry on after the fact, though.
I don't have a problem going over as long as the information is flowing and relevant. So no big deal. Good. I hope none of the listeners have a problem with this. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks to David and all the listeners. There was some interesting stuff come out in the chat as well. And have a look at Mark's channel, Mark Quayle, spelled with an I, and on YouTube. And he's got 6 videos out there now going through all of the details of this, if anybody's curious. It's definitely worth listening to. It will blow your mind what these people have gone through, and there's absolutely no excuse for what they've gone through. So all the support, anything you can offer. I mean, I know they're in England, and there's not a lot of our listeners are in England. But if you know somebody there who's in a position to help, who can assist with this, if they're working in any of the offices that are involved in this, let them know. Get them involved. Let's get the numbers up. And if it does come to it, we can get 5,000 people down there and stop this from happening. Because this is not right what's going on here, and it's all profit driven, and they're just walking on these people for because they can. There's no real reason. There's no rightful cause for what they're doing to Mark and Lisa. And this could have been so easily handled right at the beginning. If people were honest and honorable and just did what they said they were going to do, none of this would have happened. So thank you very much for everybody. Exactly. Thank you very much, Carl. I know you're not, well, I shouldn't say you're not home, but you probably are home. I know you're in transit, you're in process right now. So thanks for taking the time out and coming on and helping me with the show. Awesome with that. Thanks everybody who's listening, everybody who's going to listen, who hears this on YouTube and grabs the archives. It's only because of you guys that we do this.
Yeah. No, thanks again, John, for producing as usual. It's great to host and co-host. Good to have all the listeners and interaction, because you've just said we get a great deal out of sharing this information with you guys, but we get a kind of a greater satisfaction when you become more involved, and we can interact with you directly as rather than just talking to the microphones. So yeah, if you've got something to say, by all means bring it up, and if you want to get on the audio and chat to us and chat to anybody else, yeah, just send us a message and we'll bring you in, and whatever the subject might be, because you know, this is a Sentiomentium, it's a meeting of the minds. It doesn't have to be about law, although that's pretty much where we started, but you know, this is Jack of all trades, master of none. We just talk about what we can and have a meeting of the minds, whatever the subject. So again, thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yep, we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye for now.